Ask if anybody besides LCAT is recording this meeting. If so, get the person's name.
I'm recording the meeting, Shirley Tancredi.
Okay. And I'd like to review and approve the minutes of January 28, 2014 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 28th.
Second the motion.
So you say, is there any more discussion?
Any more discussion?
Hearing none.
Hearing none.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay.
Okay. Superintendent, Operations, Building Management, Facility Reports.
Good, thank you. For Mr. Wilson's benefit, I did want to note too that I'd like to get Mr. Kelly on the agenda towards the end of this meeting to talk about a couple of items, so we don't forget about him.
Okay.
As you know, John Collins cannot make it to the meeting this night. He has some personal issues he needs to deal with tonight, so I'll be speaking on his behalf. We have a relatively short agenda tonight. I did put one thing on the agenda that I don't think the board has seen in the past, and that is an overall summary of where we stand from the budget standpoint year to date. It's a very high overview of current budgets and current expenditures, and the way I put this together was I anticipate producing this at the end of every month.
Awesome. Again,
to give the board a heads up of where we are, where we think we're going. As of the end of January, we're at week number 30. That works out to be 58% of the fiscal year. And what I did was a comparison of where we've expended our budget versus from this year, looking backwards at last year. Particularly for some of these items, we tend to spend early in the year, or we tend to spend late in the year, so it's helpful to take a historical look back at how are we spending money this year as compared to the previous year. And I think generally that the news is pretty good. I think we're right on budget within the highway division. We, at 58% of the year being expended, we've spent 56% of the overall budget. That budget and all of these budgets, it's worth noting, include both salaries and expenses. And I may separate them out in the future, but right now my goal was to just put the overall number together.
Awesome.
Since we are limited somewhat in terms of how salaries can be spent versus how expenses can be spent. But as I said, we're essentially right on budget, actually slightly below budget and slightly below where we were on a percentage basis from last year. The building maintenance account, and Mr. Fenney can talk about this later, we tend to spend a lot of that money early in the year. So you can see that although we're at 58% of the year, we're at 62% of this year's budget. Still not bad, but again, we tend to burn through that early in the year because of the nature of how we complete projects within the town. The energy budget is worth noting for just a moment. Percentage-wise, we look very good. We're at 47% of this year's budget compared to 58%. We are up about 5% from last year. That's not a surprise, and I think anyone who's looked at their utility bills over the last couple of months have noticed that historically, based on what our temperatures were last year versus where our temperatures are this year, everybody's bill has gone up as a result of that. So we're seeing about a 5% increase. We still are below budget, though, at this point.
Okay.
Our disposal account, and that covers the transfer station, that's the one that we are running at a higher rate than I'd like to see at this point. Most of that budget is contracted services. It's outside waste hauling and disposal, waste management. So we've seen some cost increases from them. We may actually look at soliciting pricing from other waste haulers as well to try to drive that price down, to bring everything back down on budget as we can. We're not dramatically above last year, but it was difficult, as I understand, last year to get through the year on budget. It's going to be even a little bit more difficult this year. Our sewer and water accounts, they both look good. We're spending money at essentially the same rate as last year. Those budgets are very much driven by charges from the city of Springfield. So they tend to, depending on the timing of when our bills come in from Springfield, they tend to bounce up and down a little bit. But again, the trends are all very similar to what they've been in the past. So my takeaway here is I think it's status quo. We're on budget, and
Seems like it.
things are going as well now as they have in the past.
Excellent. That is a good report to kind of see, to get a feel for it.
I think so.
Especially if we're sitting here asking you to do more with less.
Well, you can, especially if you're gonna do it every month.
Correct. I didn't, Shirley puts together a report every week that we're watching expenses. That tends to vary a lot week from week, so I figured by summarizing it on a monthly basis, stabilizes some of those variations and gives us some more meaningful information.
Excellent.
Couple of items just to update you on. Last meeting, we talked a little bit about the possible improvements to the Prospect Street tank that Connecticut Water Company was conceptually proposing as an idea to deal with some water quality issues that they're facing right now. It's looking less likely that they're going to move forward with that. They've started to receive preliminary pricing from the vendor who would install the mixing and aeration system within the tank. And it's at the moment, they're anticipating a capital cost that might be 25 to 50% of what it would cost them to run a water main from their system to Crystal Lake.
Right.
And they're starting to think that if they're going to spend almost as, or half as much money to improve the town's tanks, that it might make more sense for them to extend their water main to solve their problem. So they've given a heads up. They haven't made any decisions yet, but they're actually in the design process of designing that water main extension. They're going to put it out to bid. They're going to get hard numbers for it. And once they have the hard numbers for that water main, then they'll make a decision. Do they move forward with a plan to make improvements within our tanks or to extend their water system? Just by reference, I had our staff take a quick look at what we bring in from Connecticut Water Company, because that would be the effect, is that revenue goes away, the 185 customers that we currently serve in Connecticut. And they're paying in the range of about $35,000 per year as a customer.
35,000 to the plus side, or is it 35,000 that's a gross number?
That's what we bill them on average, and we have over the past 3 or 4 years.
Net number.
So the net number is gonna be more like 5 to 7?
When you say net, I'm not
Because we gotta buy the water.
We gotta buy the water.
Good point, yeah, no, I haven't netted that out. Good point is, it'll cost us less to buy the water.
Right.
We have a lot of fixed costs, though, so any revenue we bring in helps to bring those fixed costs down on a
Right.
regular basis.
Right.
It's worth taking a look at netting that out to see what the actual impact would be on the revenue kept by the department.
So those aerators that they're talking about, at some point, are we gonna be in a situation where we gotta install them?
It's hard to say. We and Connecticut Water Company met with the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission today. They wanted to have an understanding of, before they go ahead with anything that's going to cost them money, whether it's a water main or whether it's aerators in our tanks, they wanted to see where the city was. And the city has thoughts about where they can make improvements at the treatment facilities to address this problem, because it really originates with the quality of water that they provide to us.
Right.
They are moving very cautiously. They don't want to spend money where they don't necessarily need to spend it. The problem is
Connecticut's moving cautiously.
No, Springfield is moving very
Springfield.
cautiously, because they being first on the system
Right.
have the least problem.
Right.
Connecticut Water Company being last has the greatest problem.
Right.
Yet they control essentially what happens, and we pay for it, but they control what happens at their treatment facility. So they're moving slowly, and they may need to make improvements at their facility that would solve everybody's problem. If they can get by on their own, then we may end up having to pick up the issue if our numbers get too high. We're okay at the moment, and we could be okay for the next couple of years, or we might get into a bad year and find out that we have to do something similar to Connecticut faster than the people upstream of us have to do something. Connecticut's in that same situation right now. They have a problem.
Because
that
they're the
have to
furthest
fix.
one down the line.
Correct.
So, I mean, would it behoove us to split the cost with Connecticut?
We certainly, if the board thought that was a direction you might want to go, we can certainly put that on the table as they do their analysis of, do they go ahead and build infrastructure just for themselves, or infrastructure that might be shared. The numbers that I saw today, and they were very preliminary numbers for just the equipment installation, not power upgrades, not duct work, and a number of other things, were upwards of $200,000. So whether it's a 50-50 split, we're talking about a 6-figure cost probably to the town if you did it now. And conceivably, you might not have to do it. Springfield may, in time,
Bring
address the
quality
problem.
up.
They can actually do it through chemical modifications at their plant now. They piloted modifications this last year. The problem is, when they're using those chemicals, they clog their filters very quickly, and they cannot treat as much water as they normally do. so they become capacity limited, so they backed off from that pilot process so that they didn't end up in the summertime not having enough water. Quantity typically is more important than quality. You know, having no water is a very bad thing. Having water that is less than ideal is not good, but not as bad as having no water.
Okay.
So that, and that, again, if the board is of the mindset that it might be willing to participate, I'll at least put that on the table and you know, make them aware that before they make any final decisions.
That'd be how I'd frame it,
Okay.
is, you know, not that we would, not that we wouldn't, but before they would make a final decision,
Keep us in the
we'll
loop.
keep us in the loop and we'll bring it back to the board.
Okay.
We'll bring it back to
We'll
the
do
board.
so. That was really the main item that I had to talk about, then moving on to a couple of things that Mr. Collins would have talked about. Our vehicle lift, we completed a week and a half ago now, all the concrete work that was necessary to install the vehicle lift. The concrete is curing, we took cylinders and we're broken 2 cylinders today. The concrete is almost at the strength that it needs to be. We were scheduled to have the lift installed this Thursday with the impending storm. The supplier has asked us to reschedule that for the beginning of next week. So we're confident by the beginning of next week, the concrete will come fully up to strength, so that once we install the lift, we'll actually be able to use it immediately.
Right.
The initial thought was we would have to install it and then let the concrete continue to cure it before we could load it. But we're coming very quickly up to where it needs to be to put it into service. The vehicle GPS system we talked about a little bit last month. We are actively demoing a unit that TomTom provides. We put it onto our new truck number 5. Has some pretty unique functions. You can actually look essentially at a real time at a track of the vehicle. So for instance, you can take a look at a snow plowing route and you can see in real time, has a truck gone down that route or not. You can do a lot of different things in terms of tracking vehicle speeds, tracking multiple vehicles at the same time, things like that. It's a lot more graphically friendly than the Trimble system that we have right now. You can look right at the screen and you can see everything immediately. We have received quotes from TomTom, we've received quotes from Trimble to upgrade their equipment. Both of them, if you take a look at it over a 2 to 3 year amortization period, are about the same price. We don't know enough to to really figure out what the true cost of them are necessarily, but they're in the same ballpark. Both of them would save us about 25% of what we're currently paying to Trimble with the old equipment at Trimble. So by installing newer equipment, figuring in the cost of the equipment, we would still save about 25%.
Are you gonna demo the other one?
We don't need to demo that because we really know that. It's exactly the same software that we have right
Okay.
now. We know what it can do. It's just different transmission equipment that allows them to reduce the cost of providing the wireless service to us. Because effectively, we have wireless communication from every truck to their system, and we pay them every month for the cost of that wireless service.
So the other system, would we have the advantage of actual time? So like if we wanted to track a snowplow route in progress?
With the Trimble system, no, it doesn't have as much functionality as the TomTom system does. So that, that's definitely, TomTom on face value appears more appealing.
Right.
We're meeting with them again this Wednesday to learn a little bit more, to make certain we can do everything we're doing now, plus more.
Right.
Awesome.
We also are going to be meeting next week, we hope, with a rep from the software manufacturer that works with Motorola. I had mentioned last month that the Motorola radios that were installed by the town on all the town vehicles can be used to track vehicles as well. They have a GPS component built into them.
Okay.
The big advantage would be that we would not have to pay for radio transmission because we already have a licensed frequency.
Right.
So there potentially could be a significant cost savings. There will be software costs and there will be some hardware costs to receive and send signals on the radio system. We don't have those numbers yet, but we know that it would just be a one-time cost versus a recurring monthly cost that we have on the current vehicles. And then lastly, we are going to reach out to Wireless Matrix, which I believe is the firm that Mr. Mayberry's firm works with. We did take a look at some of the information online. It seems to be more geared to a vehicle dispatch organization where you're sending vehicles back and forth to customers, keeping track, and so
Exactly.
it may have more capabilities than we're looking for. We really need to just know where a vehicle is.
Right.
So, short story on that. Did want to mention a little bit about one of the big activities of the last 2 weeks, obviously, was the response to the storm last Wednesday. Generally, I think we did pretty good. We were on the road at about 5 a.m. with Sanders initially, and then we had all the guys going by just about 6:30 to 7 o'clock that morning. As everybody knows, snow came down fast and came down hard. You know, the first 6 hours was pretty intense. We had a couple of areas that we could have done better on. We had, that I know was a fact, one missed street until very late in the day, and we had a couple of streets that got plowed once, but really need to get plowed a second time, and didn't get plowed till very late in the day. One of the things we did, I think, for the first time here is we actually got our supervisors together and we did a post-storm assessment. We sat down with all the supervisors and really talked about, you know, where can we do better the next time.
Right.
And one of the areas that we called attention to is that during a large storm like that, everyone plows. The supervisors plow, the Sanders plow, everybody's out there on the streets. So it's a little bit more difficult to keep track of things. And what we really need to do is we need to keep track of the Sanders, because they have plowing routes of their own, and they sand. And what happens is they get called during the day, during the plowing activities, to go to one location, go to another location, to do spot sanding when there's problems. And then they have to come back to the route. And given that they're not following us, you know, a consistent sequence, they're the ones that are most prone to miss something, because they're constantly bouncing back and forth. We really, from a management standpoint, just have to make certain we're watching what they're doing to make certain that they get back to the right locations, because they get pulled in a lot of different directions.
Better GPS system, make that simpler.
It would definitely help.
Yeah.
And we, you know, quite honestly, we had the information to have done that during the storm. We have to do a better job of reviewing that information as well. As we looked at our sheets, we actually found that we had a sheet that had not been checked off, or we had a street that had not been checked off. So it's a combination of things. It's a combination of knowing where our weaknesses are, paying more attention to those, and then using the information we already have better.
Right.
Let's see. I did want to note, one of the things I have been doing as I've been seeing various bills and invoices come in is take a look at where can we potentially save money. I saw our first month's worth of cell phone bills and data bills, and it looks like we have an opportunity to save, I'm hoping, a couple of $1,000s per year there. Mr. Kelly and I are meeting with the AT&T rep next week to try to consolidate the plans, so we have essentially everybody having what they need, but not more than they need in some cases, and be able to bring some of those costs down.
Right.
I think that's what I had on my agenda, so with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Fenny.
Today we held our kickoff meeting for the high school tennis courts with Gale Associates, who we thought was the best firm and best fit for that project. So we had all the interested parties in the room, school department, the selectmen, and the petitioner for that warrant article. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll be going out to the site, identifying the utilities and kind of the groundwork that needs to be looked at by the engineering firm. Our next scheduled meeting will be February 25th to review some of those items and probably come to a better understanding what everybody is looking for in that project. Also, we met, me and Mr. Parent met with Mr. Caliento last week to review completed capital projects. We came up with about $56,429 worth of capital projects that we will be turning back to the town. That's all I got.
And that was where we under-ran budgets on projects and were able to give the money back to the town to reallocate.
Awesome.
That should help them.
I think if Mr. Kelly is ready.
Sure. I'll start with the, potentially the better news. As you may or may not be aware, we almost a year ago, were looking at purchasing electricity through solar credits. And we had various meetings. We talked with various vendors, and we had come up with the entity of Solterra, who we began entering into contract negotiations. It got to the point of almost signing a memorandum of understanding. They ran into snafu with the state, I don't know the full details, Bob might know it better, but the allocation that the state had made was used up very quickly with the various solar fields that were being developed. That is currently in the process of being, I'll say, extended or enlarged, opening the market back up for things like this. And Bob and I met with a representative from Solterra today. They're really starting to move forward on their project. That was at the St. Joseph's Abbey in Spencer. The good news on that, although the terms are going to change slightly based on market conditions or whatnot, right now we can anticipate almost a $4 million savings over 20 years.
Nice.
Starting at somewhere around $163,000 the first year, and then going up each year. Again, we're going to fine tune our numbers, our electric numbers, our actual consumption in kilowatts for the past calendar year, which we have access to, and we're going to see if we can tighten that up a little bit more. And hopefully within maybe the next 2 weeks, we'll be at a point where we can come back to the board, discuss details, and potentially enter into an agreement at that point.
Awesome.
Move forward.
That'd be good.
The
Real good.
other thing, I had mentioned it at the previous meeting, that our transfer station license renewal went through. Right now, we're working on, and we will have it out this week, is our permit for the compost operation that we carry on the back portion of the closed landfill. However, part of what the state wants to do is they want to kind of tie things up. As you probably recall, there's a lengthy history on both our landfill sites in town where we've done comprehensive analysis of the cover material and so forth. And basically, it's been sitting at DEP for a few years now with no action on it. I think in this case, because we're going to be licensed to have a use on the former landfill, they're going to want us to make it a little bit tighter and actually do a post-closure use filing
On Summers Road?
on Summers Road. So basically, it may entail things such as bringing the cover of fill a little bit deeper on old landfill areas.
Right.
Some of them are out in the woods, so we probably won't even address those. We may have to put down a paved surface for composting versus the soil surfaces that we currently use, just to give us a better barrier. I don't think we'll have any problems with the potential runoff from the compost or anything like that, so.
Did they mention anything about Allen Street?
Not yet.
Not yet.
And the timing of that submission, it needs to go in June of this year.
Yes.
Looking ahead, that will likely result in some response from DEP. That probably will be something we'll be working on next fiscal year, I would imagine. Things don't move very quickly, so
Okay.
don't see it as a capital issue this year, but it could be next year where we have to invest some in putting down, paved barriers, as Sean indicated, to keep it, prevent us from damaging the cover of the landfill itself.
Is this region still Mike Korski?
Yes.
And your relationship is good? Bob, you know Mike Korski?
I don't know Mike real well. I do know the solid waste folks pretty well. Dan Hall,
Oh, good.
Charlie Klein's boss, for instance. And they're generally pretty reasonable people to deal with.
Good.
I think that's what we have.
Okay.
Any other business? No other business, so we'll schedule the next meeting?
I think we can.
November 25th?
Works for me. Good?
Yep.
Okay, so our next meeting will be February 25th, 5 o'clock here.
5 o'clock here.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Any opposed?
Didn't see any.
So,
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
Nice.